May the words of my mouth and the thoughts of all our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. In Matthew's version of the Beatitudes, the version we just heard in the Gospel reading, Jesus withdraws to a mountain, echoing Moses ascending to Mount Sinai, and begins to teach. This setting is no accident. Matthew presents Jesus as a new Moses, one who interprets God's law and guides his followers into a deeper, more radical way of living. Jesus does not instruct the disciples on how to become blessed, nor does he command them to bless each other. Instead, he calls them to recognize who is already blessed by God. And this is a shock to the system, for the people Jesus names as blessed are not those we typically associate with blessing. Every community, whether religious or secular, has its own definition of what it means to be blessed, or what it means to have a good life or success. That definition usually revolves around wealth, power, popularity, or beauty. We see that so much in the world around us today. In our wider culture, this idea of blessing is frequently measured in material terms, and who is first or on top of whatever group it is, whether work, who is, on top of the social ladder, all those sort of hierarchical models. And those who are struggling or suffering are often overlooked. But Jesus turns these standards upside down. He proclaims that those who are poor in spirit, those who mourn, the meek, the merciful, the pure in heart, those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, the peacemakers and the persecuted, these unexpected people, these are the ones who are truly blessed. Jesus invites us to see the world differently, to recognize blessedness not in outward achievement or prosperity, but in openness to God and a life marked by compassion, humility, and justice. And we hear that echoing even through the prayers we've had so far in our service this morning and later. In doing so, Jesus challenges us to look beyond the usual markers of worth and value. The Beatitudes call us to perceive that those whom the world neglects or despises are often the very people God honors and loves. We are called not merely to bless others, but to recognize the God-given dignity and blessedness of every person, especially those who suffer, those who yearn for justice, or who are oppressed. This is not just some fancy theological point. It is an invitation to enter into the lives and struggles of others, to forgive rather than judge, to see character rather than possessions and achievements, and to remember that God meets us most profoundly in our deepest needs. Matthew's version of the Beatitudes shares a spirit similar to that of Mary's Magnificat in Luke. God lifts up the lowly and fills the hungry with good things. Jesus urges his disciples to see people through God's eyes, measuring not by success, accumulation of wealth or status, or ability, but by faith, character, and need. This radical way of living flips conventional values on their head, calling us to see ourselves and others as God does. And that can be a really hard and challenging thing to do. In Matthew's Gospel, blessing, the Greek word they have is makarios, means far more than just happiness or fortune. He speaks of a blessedness that is not earned by merit or effort, but is a gift of God's presence. To be blessed, as Jesus describes, is to know that God is with us in every circumstance, in our messes and our marvels, and that we are never alone. But the Beatitudes are grounded in a rich tradition found in Israel's scriptures, or what we'd call the Old Testament. In Psalms and Proverbs, wisdom literature, that commends actions and attitudes pleasing to God. But Jesus gives these ancient, familiar sayings a paradoxical twist. The blessed are those the world would least expect. In Jesus' teaching, being blessed is not about prosperity or good fortune, but about participating in God's new community, marked by spiritual well-being and commitment to justice, mercy, and peace. This is a countercultural way of life. In a world focused on wealth and power, Jesus blesses the poor and the peacemakers. In a culture of violence and vengeance, Jesus honors the mournful, the meek, and the merciful. The Beatitudes describe a way of life that deliberately chooses not to participate in the cycles of power and violence. And because of this, it is a life that can be vulnerable, open to being misunderstood, or even persecuted. Yet this vulnerability becomes a place where God's presence is most fully revealed. The blessings Jesus announces are both present, here and now, and future. The kingdom of heaven, that is God's kingdom, is already here, transforming life here and now. God is with us, but its fullness is still yet to come. To live by the Beatitudes is to live in the way of God's promised future, even when it seems upside down to the world around us. Even when hope seems scarce, the Beatitudes remind us that our choices and actions have meaning. What we do and say matters. That's a really good reminder, particularly with all the events that are happening around us. That even though we may feel overwhelmed or we may feel like such a small part of things, or there is just so much going on, what we do and say really does matter. Success isn't about climbing the world's ladder. It's not about being on top or our level of productivity or ability, but about living with faithfulness, generosity, purpose, and love. Reflecting on the Beatitudes encourages us to put these blessings into practice every day. By acting with gentleness, offering comfort, seeking justice, and choosing mercy, even in our small everyday actions, we are called to live by the values of God's kingdom, serving as channels of love and grace in the world around us, helping to bring about God's transformative work in our world. As we strive to live out these blessings, we trust that God will meet us, strengthen us, and use us to bless others. In the name of Christ, Amen.